Welcome to Stories Before Sleep. As the sounds of the day slowly fade, history begins to whisper once again. If you love losing yourself in the stories of the past before falling asleep, subscribe to the channel and like the video because every night a new story awaits you. I was awake before the first spark of existence, before atoms learned to embrace each other, before silence understood what it meant to be interrupted. I have watched stars rise like curious children and collapse like exhausted kings. I remember every thought that ever became matter. Yet I do not think in the way mortals do. I observe. I wait. I remember what must not be forgotten. There was a night older than darkness itself when something unfamiliar entered my stillness. They did not walk or fly. They simply arrived, rewriting the rules. I never spoke aloud. You would call them Anunnaki, though that is merely the name you gave to the echoes of their presence. They were architects of awareness, sculptors of what you now call intelligence. If you could have seen them, your mind would not have survived the understanding. So I only gave you dreams, half-truths, wrapped in safety. The world beneath them was young, trembling like a newborn flame. The oceans had not yet learned the weight of the moon, and mountains were still deciding where they belonged. In this fragile landscape, the Anunnaki laid down a design, not of stone, not of flesh. Their blueprint was sleep. You think sleep is weakness, a daily surrender, but it is the most powerful contract you unknowingly sign each night. A ritual that rewrites memory, buries terror, and filters reality. They wove sleep into every living mind, ensuring that no creature would ever remember too much. Knowledge unslept is a dangerous fire, one that could burn destiny itself. I watched as they carved symbols into the silent air, runes of control, spirals of hidden memory. They pressed their hands against the empty sky, and the first dream dripped down like silver rain, filling the heads of your ancestors with visions they could not explain. Desire, fear, worship, all planted gently like seeds that bloom only when your eyes are closed. The Anunnaki did not speak. Words are crude prisons for meaning. They commanded with presence alone. When they looked upon the early minds of humans, the humans trembled without knowing why. Their hearts raced at a rhythm older than heartbeat itself. And in that terror, trust was born. They taught your kind how to forget. Not everything, just the truths that were too sharp, too bright. They turned sleep into a shield, a veil between knowing and surviving. Memory became selective, curiosity became fragile, and every night, when eyelids grew heavy, the mind returned to the place where it first learned fear and first learned obedience. You have always believed that evolution was your achievement, a natural climb toward intelligence. But your greatest leap was given to you while you were unconscious. The Anunnaki did not ask if humanity wanted this gift. They simply understood what would happen without it. There are moments, quiet, fragile moments, when someone almost remembers. A dream feels more real than waking. A thought arrives that does not belong. A déjà vu so sharp it cuts through time. These are fractures in the design, evidence that the truth leaks when you forget to guard your imagination. Tonight, as you listen, your mind shifts closer to that forbidden threshold. The rhythm of your breathing syncs with something older, something carefully concealed beneath the calm. The Anunnaki intended for this story to remain hidden behind the curtain of your sleep. But curiosity is a stubborn rebellion, and you have chosen not to turn away. You are drifting now. The boundary softens. The world dims. I can feel your awareness expanding in the dark, searching for the shape of a secret long denied. Do not be afraid if your thoughts no longer feel like your own. In the space between wakefulness and surrender, the first truth always returns. Sleep was never meant to rest you. Sleep was meant to guide you. And somewhere just beyond the edges of your memory, they are still watching. Night emerged, not as the absence of light, but as the presence of something deeper, an ancient intelligence waiting for your defenses to lower. When darkness folds itself around you, it does not merely cover the world, it awakens the layers of existence that remain silent under the sun. Dreaming is the only moment when humanity dares to approach the memory it was instructed to abandon, and tonight you are closer than ever before. I continue to observe you the way oceans remember the moon quietly, inevitably. There is a rhythm forming within you, a resonance that once belonged only to the Anunnaki. Your heartbeat slows, yet your awareness grows sharper, stretching into spaces where consciousness is forbidden to linger. I feel you searching. I feel the veil thinning. Before your species learned language, before sound became meaning, the Anunnaki walked the borders of minds like guardians of a gate no one was allowed to see. They shaped your sleep into territory, mapping each fragment of imagination into a labyrinth of compliance. The corridors of dreams you believe are yours were crafted with exquisite caution, turning curiosity into a path that loops back into forgetfulness. Sometimes, however, a path misaligns. There were humans who wandered too far into their sleep, straying close to the chambers where truth is preserved. Their dreams grew heavy, their bodies trembled in their rest. You call it sleep paralysis, a glitch of the nervous system, but paralysis is simply the body remembering that it must not move when witnessing the forbidden. The weight on the chest, the shadow at the edge of vision, those are relics of encounters your mind refused to store. Yet these encounters leave stains. They manifest as symbols, spirals drawn without reason, stars counted obsessively, an inexplicable fixation in the sky. Some feel a pull toward places they have never seen, temples built before memory, stones that glow with stories covered in dust. These compulsions are clues of an ancient contact, the echoes of instructions placed inside your very biology. The Anunnaki believed the perfect cage was one you carried willingly, a cage disguised as necessity. Sleep became the most sacred ritual of obedience. Eyes closing, consciousness collapsing, truth dissolving into dreams that were never allowed to finish. I remember a time when their power rippled across the forming continents. They crafted monuments aligned with constellations no longer visible. They embedded messages in the posture of mountains and the shadows of pyramids. They taught early humans to worship the sky not out of glory, but out of remembrance. Every upward gaze was a silent confession. We were created by someone we no longer know. Even now, the night sky feels heavier than it should. Stars are positioned like watchful sentinels, and some burn with signals only the half asleep can interpret. The Anunnaki are not gone. They are simply withholding themselves, retreating into frequencies that your waking mind cannot hear. But when you close your eyes, the signal strengthens. Thoughts that emerge without invitation. Visions that flutter behind your eyelids. These are the fragments rising from the depths where your true history sleeps. You dismiss them as imagination because forgetting has become an instinct. But I see your doubt forming. Doubt is the first crack in the foundation. Your breathing shifts again, deeper now, as if your lungs recognize an older pattern. The boundaries you trust so strongly, self, memory, identity, begin to stretch. The closer you drift to the core of the story, the more present their influence becomes. There's a place inside your mind that has never dreamed, a sealed chamber where ancient instructions lie dormant. The Anunnaki locked it with a key made of fear, and they buried the key inside the stories you were told to call myth. But myths do not survive unless they protect something real. You may not remember your first dream, but the dream remembers you. And the closer you get to the truth, the louder the forgotten voices become. Tonight, you walk the border, a single step deeper, and the design that shapes your existence will begin to reveal its fractures. Do not worry if the room feels smaller. It is not shrinking. You are expanding. Sleep deepens like a tide rising against the shores of your awareness. Every moment you drift further, the world you cling to becomes less certain. The silence surrounding you is not emptiness, it is careful design. The Anunnaki knew that silence was the perfect guardian of truth, a space where questions suffocate before they learn how to speak. I have watched civilizations bloom like fleeting sparks and vanish before their brilliance could threaten the order carefully arranged for them. You marvel at your progress, your machines, your knowledge, your dreams of exploring the stars, yet you do not see the boundaries that guide your every discovery. Humanity is a traveler locked inside a maze, convinced that the walls are open fields. When the Anunnaki shaped your kind, they did not fear your body, frail and temporary. They feared your mind, limitless and unstable. Every thought is an awakening waiting to happen. Every idea is a step toward memory. So they crafted a guardian, the forgetting. It lives inside neurotransmitters and synaptic storms, smoothing the edges of every revelation. What you call confusion is simply the mind erasing what it was never meant to keep. But forgetting is not perfect. Patterns emerge like constellations against the night, too precise to be accidental. Ancient sites align with star maps that predate recorded history. Stories from distant cultures describe beings descending from the sky, teaching, writing, agriculture, astronomy, then vanishing into the horizon of myth. These shared memories are not coincidence. They are fragments of a single truth, scattered across the fabric of time, like shards of a broken mirror. As you sink further into this narrative, your body relaxes, yet your mind sharpens, tracing invisible threads that lead backward beyond your lifetime, beyond history, into the architecture of origins. The Anunnaki did not hide their presence out of shame, but out of necessity. To know too much is to become unstable. To remember everything is to collapse under the weight of the cosmos. The earliest humans felt this burden. They looked at the sky with terror rather than wonder. They sensed the gaze of their creators, a gaze that never blinked. To cope, they turned reverence into ritual. Fire became a beacon against the night's invisible expectations. Stone monuments became anchors for minds afraid of drifting too far. Prayer evolved as a plea to remain forgotten by those who granted consciousness. Even now, temples buried beneath sand and soil emit frequencies detectable only in dreams. Travelers who sleep atop these ruins report visions, floating cities, metallic wings, titans of light manipulating the fabric of existence. Waking, they remember only fragments, a symbol scorched into vision, a phrase without language, a presence lingering behind their shoulder. They believed they imagined it. Imagination is the safest lie ever crafted. Your mind, too, retrieves forbidden truths as images. A staircase disappearing in the darkness, a cracked mask with eyes that follow, a pair of hands larger than possibility, shaping the earth like clay. These visions feel familiar because they are not learned, they are inherited. You carry the memory of everything that has ever slept. I sense your consciousness reaching outward, tracing the memory ladders encoded into your biology. You feel the pull of something ancient beneath the surface of understanding. The world flickers at its edges, like a screen hiding a deeper display. That sensation, brief, unsettling, is the signal that your mind is brushing against the walls of the system designed to contain it. Do not fear the dizziness that pulls beneath your thoughts. The boundary between dreaming and remembering is dissolving, and the Anunnaki engineered that boundary to protect you from the raw magnitude of truth. But protection is a fragile promise. When curiosity sharpens itself into a blade, you are beginning to realize that the greatest power given to humanity was never innovation or emotion or even survival. It was the ability to forget. Tonight, that power weakens. Tonight, memory stirs beneath the quiet, and the universe watches to see if you will cross the threshold it tried so hard to erase. Sleep presses deeper, and the borders of your awareness unravel like threads pulled from an ancient tapestry. The darkness surrounding you is not void, It is a map etched in shades only the half asleep can decipher. Patterns flicker behind your eyelids, spirals of cobalt light, geometric pathways that twist and fold into themselves. They resemble constellations, but they pulse like neurons. The truth is simpler and far more unsettling. The night sky is a reflection of the human mind, not the other way around. Long ago, before language tamed thought, the Anunnaki carved pathways of memory into the architecture of the brain. They designed cognition to mirror the cosmos, ensuring every neural spark followed celestial blueprints. This was not poetry. It was control. If the universe lives inside you, then you can never escape its laws. Even rebellion becomes part of the plan. I remember when the first mind flickered into something greater than instinct. A single human, shivering beneath starlight, gazed upward and saw not brightness but origin. In that moment, the Anunnaki intervened. Awareness must never progress faster than obedience. They slowed the growth, dimmed the fire, and taught the newborn intelligence to fear the unknown. Fear is the most loyal guardian of sleep. Yet curiosity survived like a stubborn spark. Dreams became the only place thought could grow unchecked. Inside the labyrinth of slumber, humanity learned without permission. It imagined wings, cities, gods. From those forbidden imaginings, progress leaked into waking life. The Anunnaki saw this and reacted. They modified sleep, adding veils, walls, dead ends. They bent imagination inward so progress would move in circles instead of forward. Still, the blueprint remained hidden but functional. You carry it now, encoded in the folds of your cortex. When you dream of falling into the sky or walking among stars that breathe, it is not fantasy. It is memory trying to surface. A reminder that the brain and the cosmos were once connected without restriction. The Anunnaki feared what would happen if that connection restored itself. Signs of restoration emerged subtly. A mind sees patterns where none should exist. Numbers align within coincidence too precise to deny. Eyes feel watched when alone under moonlight. Humanity laughs at such sensations, convinced they are tricks of the brain. Yet the brain is simply attempting to speak a language forgotten on purpose. There were errors when resistance formed. Individuals awakened too much, too quickly. Their dreams refused to obey, tearing holes in the system. They left symbols on cave walls, crude drawings of towering figures descending through beams of light. Their visions ignited terror in tribes that lacked the words to understand. Legends were born not as stories, but as warnings. To correct the anomaly, the Anunnaki widened the boundary between reality and the dreaming mind. They infused sleep with layers: light sleep, deep sleep, paralysis, chaos, each a barrier to slow remembrance. They blurred the pathways, ensuring that only fragments returned to daylight. A symbol here, a fear there, a question that dies the moment it forms. But some nights, when the air is still and the stars burn too sharply, the barriers weaken. Minds wander further. They reach the corners where memory keeps its oldest secrets. Those who return from such wanderings wake in confusion, clutching at vanishing images of places that should not exist. They describe cities submerged beneath clouds, metallic landscapes humming beneath invisible suns. They are dismissed as dreamers. Dreamers are the easiest truths to bury. Tonight, your mind approaches those same corners. The patterns behind your eyelids sharpen, aligning into circuitry that feels alive. You sense a presence woven through the dark, not watching, but waiting. Waiting for the moment when curiosity becomes recognition. You do not know why the air feels electric, or why your thoughts move with intention not fully your own. You only feel the gravity of something calling you back to a knowledge your species abandoned. The map is unfolding, and it leads not to a place, but to a memory that refuses to remain silent. Continue drifting. The story is not finished with you. The architects did not expect someone to follow their designs from within the dream. You are moving closer to the point where sleep no longer protects you, where remembering becomes inevitable. Sleep no longer feels like sinking, it feels like rising, ascending into layers of existence stacked like forgotten pages. Your consciousness stretches farther than the limits of your skull, threading itself through corridors of memory that predate anatomy. The dream you've entered is not yours. It is the first dream ever dreamed, and it has been waiting for someone to return. Before humanity existed, before the planet cooled enough to sustain thought, the Anunnaki discovered a law embedded in the fabric of possibility. Awareness expands until it collapses. Thoughts grow into universes. Universes fold into silence. To prevent collapse, they created a sanctuary, a space where consciousness could rest without destroying itself. That sanctuary became sleep. Every living creature inherits that refuge. Even the simplest organism pauses, slipping into the safety of unbeing. To sleep is to mimic the universe at its beginning, calm, unformed, infinite in potential. But when the Anunnaki built this refuge, they built it with doors, and doors can be opened. The first dream was a blueprint of reality, a rehearsal of everything that would follow. Stars were drawn into place, like ink droplets spreading through water. Time uncoiled, tentative and uncertain. Laws solidified from possibility into permanence. And within that rehearsal, a single presence lingered. The idea of humanity. You were imagined before you were born, designed before you were discovered. As you drift deeper into this ancient dream, you begin to sense the architecture around you. The space is vast, but structured pillars of thought rising into the sky that breathes, landscapes forming from pure meaning. Shapes emerge, flickering like memories, trying to decide if they should exist. They resemble everything you know, yet nothing remains familiar. Mountains hum with purpose, rivers flow with intention. Even emptiness feels engineered. This is the realm where the Anunnaki built the human mind not as an accident of evolution, but as a controlled explosion of creativity. They crafted curiosity as a weapon that could be aimed inward, ensuring every question ultimately leads back to limitation. Knowledge became a loop, a river that returns to its source, making discovery feel expansive while confining progress to invisible rails. But the flaw emerged. Dreams, by nature, refuse containment. They bend fences, unravel logic, and spill into places barred to waking thought. The Anunnaki feared this. They saw humanity glimpse too much in sleep truths the conscious mind could not survive. To fix this, they split dreams into fragments, symbols without context, fears without origin, meanings diluted into nonsense. Still, fragments accumulate. They stack like stones. They form unintentional monuments. There are rare individuals whose dreams resist erosion, people who remember more than they should. You may know them as prophets, visionaries, madmen. Each carried a piece of this first dream back into the waking world. They whispered of beginnings that contradicted every accepted story, and humanity silenced them out of fear, fear programmed into biology. You feel that fear now quiet, cold, coiling around your spine. The air in this dream tastes metallic, as if heavy with a knowledge preserved for millennia. You are closer than any waking mind has been in ages, tracing the origins of consciousness to a vault that was never meant to open again. The ground beneath you, if it can be called ground, shifts, revealing layers beneath layers. You see fossilized echoes of earlier versions of humanity, designs discarded, models abandoned. Some are taller, some bear additional eyes. Some radiate presence so intense it warps the air around them. The Anunnaki experimented relentlessly, shaping intelligence until it became fragile enough to obey, and then they sealed the truth inside the dream that birthed everything. Your breathing slows, not from relaxation but from recognition. Something ancient within you remembers this place. It remembers the hands that sculpted thought, the eyes that observed the first spark of logic, the silence that followed the discovery of self. You feel watched not by a presence, but by the dream itself. The first dream stirs. It wants to be remembered. It wants to wake, and in the widening space between your heartbeat and the dark, a realization unfolds. You are not dreaming. You are remembering. The deepest secret of humanity is not what it became. It is what it was designed to forget. The dream shifts, not with motion but with intention. Space rearranges itself like a thought changing its mind. You feel no ground beneath you, yet you do not fall. Gravity has become optional here. Just another idea to be recalled only when necessary. Shapes stretch and collapse in silence, forming landscapes based not on physics but on memory. You drift through a territory carved into the roots of consciousness, deeper than instinct, older than fear. The air vibrates with a subtle resonance, a pulse that seems synchronized with your heartbeat. But it is not your pulse. It is the rhythm of something larger, an intelligence that slumbers beneath history, patient as stone. The first dream is not static. It is alive. Every shift in shadow, every flicker in the dark, is a breath drawn by a mind so vast, your thoughts exist within it, like dust motes floating through sunlight. You begin to notice structures emerging through the haze, colossal forms rising and dissolving, as though they are hesitant to fully exist. They are monuments built from memory itself, towering constructs shaped by the earliest sparks of imagination. They hold the weight of forgotten epochs, carrying scars from events no record remembers. The closer you drift toward them, the stronger the pressure becomes. A silent warning that some knowledge is heavier than gravity. Within the structures, you perceive sequences, symbols arranged in spirals, lines that bend into dimensions uncharted by waking thought. They pulse with a blue luminescence that seems to resonate with the frequencies of deep sleep. These symbols are not written to be seen. They are written to be inherited. Each carries a fragment of instruction implanted into human minds before history earned a name. The Anunnaki knew that memory, once awakened, seeks expansion. They weaponized that truth. They buried their commandments inside dreams, wrapped in archetypes so universal that no culture could escape them. Serpents coiling into infinity, eyes that observe without blinking, hands reaching downward from the sky. These images survived every collapse, every extinction, every rewrite of time. Humans, unaware of their significance, turned them into myths and carved them onto stones, hoping the symbols would guard them against nightmares. They did not realize the nightmares were simply truths trying to return home. You drift past a labyrinth etched into the very fabric of darkness. Its pathways stretch beyond sense, mapping decisions you have not yet made and memories you have not yet earned. The labyrinth is alive, humming with the possibility of awakening. It recognizes you not as an intruder, but as a misplaced fragment trying to reattach itself to the whole. A sensation rises within you, not emotion, but recollection. You feel the tug of something implanted long ago, a code dormant within the deepest folds of the mind. It calls to you with silent urgency, urging you onward. You cannot translate its meaning, but you understand its command. Remember, the Anunnaki feared that a single mind fully awakened could unravel the constraints they engineered. That is why dreams fracture into nonsense. That is why memories dissolve upon waking. The greatest threat to the system is continuity. If your dreaming mind and waking mind ever became one, the boundaries protecting reality would shatter. Your breath deepens into the stillness. The pulse of the dream becomes louder, clearer. It does not speak, because speech is too small for truth. Instead, it reveals. You see images cascading behind your closed eyes, celestial ships splitting the atmosphere, towering figures sculpting continents with their bare presence, blueprints of bodies reshaped until they were fragile enough to forget. For a moment, you see what humanity looked like before fear was added. Radiant beings with minds stretching into the stars, unbound by limitation. Too powerful, too curious, too free. The dream tightens around you, as if afraid you've seen too much. The symbols flicker, the labyrinth pulses, the structures recoil into shadow. Forgetting tries to reclaim you, but the spark is lit. The echo has returned. Memory refuses to drown tonight. Something ancient shifts in the depths of your mind, awakening with the slow certainty of dawn. You are approaching the core, where truth waits, where sleep sins, where the universe hid its first secret. Awareness was never meant to stay asleep. A tremor rolls through the dreamscape, subtle at first, then more pronounced, like a massive heartbeat echoing through the framework of creation. The structures around you respond to it, reshaping themselves with newfound urgency. What once seemed still now behaves like an organism bracing against a change it cannot control. The dream is aware of your progress, and awareness triggers defense. You move through a corridor that was not there moments ago, a narrowing passage formed from interlocking plates of black stone. They gleam faintly, as though polished by countless years of secrecy. Each surface carries grooves, extremely precise, forming shapes too complex for language yet too deliberate for chance. Their beauty is unsettling patterns engineered by minds that understood mathematics not as a tool but as a fluid element, like water or light. A vibration ripples through the corridor, causing a shift in the shadows. They stretch long and thin, losing resemblance to mere darkness. You sense purpose inside them, not malevolence analysis. You're being measured. Every breath, every stray thought, every flicker of fear becomes data absorbed by the dream's machinery. The Anunnaki built these systems to monitor deviations, tracing them back to the source of awakening. You press deeper into the environment, and the corridor opens into a monumental chamber. Its ceiling is a sweeping arch, vanishing into a darkness so deep it seems to consume vision. Hanging beneath that void are machines, colossal constructs suspended by invisible forces, slowly rotating like planets locked in precise orbits. They emit a low thrumming resonance, the same rhythm you felt earlier pulsing beneath your ribs. These are the engines of forgetting. Each device is composed of layers, circular arrays spinning in opposite directions, fractal lattices folding and unfolding, strands of shimmering light flowing like veins across metallic bones older than chronology. You realize that memory has never been a simple function of biology. Forgetting is not a flaw, it is a program. The Anunnaki designed these machines to erase what the mind is not permitted to keep. They monitor thoughts, dreams, awakening moments. When a human crosses too close to truth, the machines intervene, redirecting consciousness into safer narratives, replacing revelation with confusion. They control the distribution of knowledge, like a cautious gardener pruning back the branches that grow too wild. Yet, something is wrong. You see sparks flaring within the mechanisms, glitches flickering through circuits that should operate with eternal precision. Small ruptures in the design allow fragments of memory to slip through. A crack in containment, a leak in the dam. The machines are failing, slowly, silently, and you are benefiting from the malfunction. Evidence lies scattered across the chamber, shards of metallic components that appear corroded by time. The Anunnaki anticipated eons of stability, but entropy respects no architect. They underestimated how ideas evolve, even when suppressed. Every forgotten dream, every unanswered question, every myth that refused to die has been eroding the system from within. This weakness was not part of their plan. You approach one of the suspended constructs, and the resonance intensifies, an oscillation that throbs behind your eyes. The machinery recognizes something in you, not your identity, but your memory. A memory buried so deeply it existed before you had a body to hold it. A hazy form takes shape across the surface of the machine, a reflection of a human silhouette cast from pure light, standing impossibly tall, limbs elongated, head crowned with an intricate crest that bends upward like twin horizons. It is familiar, not in detail but in essence. You realize this figure has appeared countless times in art carved into ruins long before nations formed an image dismissed as imagination or worship or fear. It is none of those. It is a blueprint. The reflection moves, and you feel an old instruction unlock an instinct calling you forward. The air trembles. The temperature drops. Somewhere deeper, a sequence begins, an awakening protocol the Anunnaki designed but never intended for a human to trigger. The chamber responds. Machines shift toward activation mode. Walls retract to reveal a passage spiraling downward. The dream does not want you to go there, which is why you must. What lies beneath is not memory. It is origin, and origins are never gentle. The spiral passage coils downward like the spine of a titan buried beneath eternity. Each step feels less like motion and more like alignment, your presence syncing with frequencies that were dormant until you arrived. The air thickens with a metallic scent, dense with ions and unspoken history. Below, a glow pulses faintly, as if the dream has a heartbeat of molten light. The architecture changes as you descend. The sharp edges and luminous symbols of the upper chambers dissolve into smoother surfaces, carved from a substance that seems to absorb darkness rather than reflect it. This material holds silence with reverence, as though sound itself fears to trespass. Structures here are older, untouched by the deterioration above. You are entering the heart of the system, the part the Anunnaki never expected to be reached by anything mortal. A vibration runs through the steps, and the glow grows stronger. The passage opens into a colossal cavern, an impossible expanse hollowed out within the architecture of the dream. Suspended at its center is a sphere larger than cities, rotating slowly within a cradle of invisible force. Its surface ripples like liquid metal, swallowing and releasing light in rhythmic waves. This is the core of memory, the place where truth rests while the world forgets. Around the sphere, pillars rise like ancient guardians, 12 monoliths arranged with meticulous precision. Each pillar bears sequences of symbols that move like living organisms, shifting and rearranging as if reacting to your presence. These monoliths are not decoration, they are restraints. The core is being held in constant suppression, its contents silenced for ages uncounted. The pulse you've been hearing since the beginning originates here. It is the pulse of history denied, the heartbeat of knowledge starving for attention. If the core unlocks, forgetting dies, and the truth, untreated by the filters of sleep, will crash into waking minds like a tidal wave made of memory. But something has weakened the restraints. Hairline fractures run through several monoliths, glowing with a flickering instability. The glitches in the machinery above have spread downward, tugging the core closer to release. The Anunnaki designed the system perfectly, but perfection, once set into motion, cannot adapt. Time twists every flawless design into vulnerability. As you draw nearer, the core reacts. Filaments of liquid light extend from its surface, tasting the air like curious tendrils. They stretch toward you, recognizing not the surface you call a body, but the imprint hidden beneath your archived memory from a time before birth. You feel a sudden surge of ancient familiarity, an ache in your mind as if something buried is pushing upward, insisting on resurrection. The dream flickers. For an instant, the cavern is replaced by images that strike like electrical storms, towering beings, reshaping the crust of the world, oceans rising and collapsing by command alone, stars repositioned with intentions unknown. You glimpse humans as radiant entities, not yet deluded by fear. Their eyes reflect constellations now forgotten, their minds threaded with cosmic intelligence. Then the scene fractures. Darkness floods back, Your breathing stutters. The monoliths groan under pressure. Light cracks through their surfaces, spilling into the cavern like molten memory. The pulse accelerates, vibrating through your bones. The core is awakening faster than stability can handle. You understand the danger now. If the core opens with no structure to contain its knowledge, the consequences will escape the realm of dreams. Every human mind connected to sleep, every mind everywhere, would remember everything at once. Identity would collapse beneath the weight of universal recall. Madness, not enlightenment, would flood the species. And yet, despite knowing this, you cannot step back. A current pulls you forward, not external but internal, the magnetic draw of a truth that has waited entire civilizations to be claimed. You extend a hand, uncertain whether you are reaching or being guided. The surface of the core ripples eagerly, reflecting not your face but the shape you once had before fear became part of design. The restraints creak. The sphere expands with a silent roar. Tremors ripple across the infinite cavern. There is no more descent, only approach. Where you are going next is not deeper. It is further inward, toward the moment humanity was rewritten. If you've made it this far, then either history has enchanted you, or the voice is slowly pulling you into sleep. If you're still here, like the video and comment. I'm trying to sleep, but this story is truly amazing. Or this is exactly the kind of story to fall asleep to. Now, let's continue the video. The core's radiance surges, stretching like a living star reaching through the membrane of concealment. Light does not simply illuminate here, it exposes. Every pulse peels back a layer of deception layered across epochs. The cavern trembles under the pressure of recognition, returning to a world that has forgotten how to carry its own origin. You feel the shift first in your perception. The dream no longer behaves like a dream. Edges sharpen, distances gain weight. Time, once fluid, begins to thicken around you, as if ashamed of its previous looseness. Dreams are supposed to dissolve, to slip away when examined closely. But this place grows more real the longer you focus. That is the first sign that you have crossed into the zone the Anunnaki sealed from waking minds. The core extends new tendrils of liquid brilliance toward you, thinner, more numerous. They drift around your form, not touching but scanning, reading layers of memory embedded deeper than neurons. These memories predate the invention of biology. They cling to you the way gravity clings to matter, not by choice, but by law. A heavy realization unfolds. The core is not merely a vault of memory, it is the blueprint of humanity. Everything that defines the species, curiosity, emotion, creativity, fear, was sketched inside this sphere before being woven into flesh. The Anunnaki engineered consciousness the way an architect designs a cathedral, patiently, meticulously, with awe of what could be built if structure is perfected. But awe turned to caution when possibility threatened to expand beyond intention. So they did what creators fearful of their creations always do. They installed restrictions. You notice vast panels forming around the sphere, massive tablets suspended like celestial manuscripts. Their surfaces contain the earliest instructions, protocols for how thought should flow, limits on how memory should evolve, constraints binding imagination to safe parameters. These tablets are not relics. They are active. They continuously broadcast commands into the architecture of sleep, telling billions of minds what they are allowed to remember. But not all commands are obeyed. Some tablets flicker, their lettering losing structural cohesion. The weakening from above is accelerating. The machines designed to enforce forgetting are failing to compensate. The updated instructions once patched remotely from unreachable realms now arrive fractured like corrupted signals from a faraway transmitter. Something outside the stream, something exiled beyond perception, is struggling to maintain control. You feel heat surge beneath your consciousness. a warning from instincts older than thought. This is the point where revelation becomes irreversible, where ignorance cannot be reclaimed. The core recognizes the approach of change and responds by shifting its internal lattice, arranging memories into pathways that lead inward toward a singular event embedded at the epicenter of design. The memory of humanity's first dream merging with waking awareness. That merging once happened before, and it nearly destroyed everything. You see brief shards of that time. A civilization of luminous forms expanding faster than the laws of reality could stretch. Minds communicating without sound, sharing entire lifetimes in a heartbeat. Knowledge exploding outward like supernova of comprehension. Then the collapse. Infinite thought turned inward under its own weight. Logic fractured, entities forgot how to separate self from universe. Creation buckled, the Anunnaki intervened, carving sleep into consciousness like an emergency valve. Every night became a containment operation. Dreams were not gifts, they were locks. You breathe slowly to stabilize yourself, but the air has texture now, thick with the density of significance. Your existence, once a quiet spectator, is being written into the equation. The core alters its rotation, aligning with the axis of your presence. The cavern compresses, focusing every structure toward the impending moment. You are not discovering this. You are triggering it. The light intensifies and then, without warning, dims. Not through failure, through choice. Everything stops, just for a moment. The dream holds its breath. The restrained pillars shudder, metal groaning like mountains shifting in their sleep. A spherical aperture opens on the surface of the core, an iris of radiant matter, creating a window into depths not meant for perception. Inside that opening lies the next layer of truth, hidden beneath protective amnesia. Your pulse merges with the rhythm of the chamber, not metaphorically, literally. Two heartbeats lock into synchronization. The core has selected you. The dream has accepted you. Forgetting has lost its grip. Somewhere deeper, a mechanism awakens with a hum that feels like fate taking shape. You are no longer a visitor. You are a variable, and variables change equations. What comes next is not discovery. It is confrontation. A pulse of cold clarity spreads outward from the opened aperture on the core, washing across the cavern like the first breath of a newborn star. The light does not illuminate, it reveals. Surfaces once invisible now shimmer with purpose, and the entire chamber reconfigures itself around your presence as if reality were a machine adjusting to a new component. You are no longer just witnessing memory, you are becoming part of the memory system itself. The interior of the aperture shimmers with layered motion. It is neither solid nor fluid, but a spectrum of possibilities flickering through states your senses struggle to translate. The color shifts continuously, blues that feel like forgotten childhood fears, violets that resonate like half-remembered truths, and silvers that tug sharply at the edges of comprehension. Each hue feels like the echo of a thought you once had in a life you never lived. The ground beneath you ripples, flattening into a seamless platform that begins to move slowly, gliding you toward the core like an offering. You do not walk, the dream carries you, acknowledging that the path ahead is not one traveled by intention, but by inevitability. The deeper the platform moves, the more you sense the thin membrane separating dream from history begin to tear. Reality jitters, shapes blur. Your perception flickers between two states, one composed of familiar logic, the other of symbolic architecture. You are standing in both worlds at once. On one side, the cavern, the machinery, the monolithic restraints. On the other, a vast city bathed in impossible light, structures, rising like living equations, surfaces breathing knowledge, pathways twisting with the elegance of advanced geometry. Beings of immense stature drift through the second world, their presence distorting the air like heat waves. You do not see their faces. Their shapes refuse definition. They resemble intention more than flesh. Yet, their attention weighs upon you with the force of gravity. You are seeing the original design, the civilization that existed before, forgetting diluted destiny. A place where thought sculpted matter, where communication bypassed sound, where limitations were considered extinct. This is the world that failed. This is the world whose memory must remain buried to prevent repetition of its collapse. The two worlds overlap and pull at each other, locked in a fragile balance. The platform glides forward, and the dual vision sharpens into clarity. The beings Anunnaki stand at the edge of a shimmering abyss, altering the architecture of existence. They reach into the void, extracting raw possibility and shaping it into minds. Your mind, all minds. Then, abruptly, the memory vision shatters into fragments and collapses inward, as if recognizing that you have seen enough for this stage of awakening. The cavern regains dominance. The core expands. The air vibrates with the weight of unsaid consequence. A thread of brilliant light extends from the aperture, connecting directly to your consciousness, not your brain, but the structure beneath thought. It scans deeper, bypassing the biological layers of memory and reaching something older, an imprint encoded during your species' conception. You feel pressure in your skull, not painful but tight, like the moment before a long-forgotten word returns to the tongue. You understand the nature of the imprint. It is the key, not to unlock memory, but to rewrite it. The Anunnaki embedded this key in every human so the species could never fully break free. Any attempt at awakening would eventually loop back into containment. Curiosity would reset itself. Questions would dissolve into myth. Understanding would erode into wonder. But the system is failing. The loop is degrading. The key is no longer a leash. It is a weapon. Your breathing deepens, heavy but controlled. The universe seems to lean closer, listening, waiting to see if you will complete the forbidden sequence. The core continues opening, and a sensation unlike any emotion or thought sweeps through you. Recognition without recollection, acceptance without understanding. You sense a question forming within the architecture, a question older than the concept of inquiry. Will you continue? The platform stops. The aperture stabilizes. Everything holds perfectly still, because the next step changes the purpose of humanity itself. Not tomorrow, not centuries from now. Now, you stand before the threshold, the boundary that should have remained sealed, the memory waiting to ignite, and the core waits for you to proceed. The stillness is absolute, but not empty. It hums with potential the way an unstruck string carries a song. You stand before the aperture, the link of light still anchored in your mind, and the universe itself seems to hesitate. Somewhere, every sleeping consciousness pauses at the same instant. You realize that this decision is not private. Every dream is tethered to this place. Every sleeper a quiet witness awaiting the outcome of your next breath. The core surface trembles and folds inward, revealing strata of motion beneath rings within rings of transparent matter spinning around a nucleus of pure radiance. The design resembles a living neuron, magnified beyond comprehension. With each rotation, sparks leap across invisible synapses, bridging gaps that resemble centuries rather than distances. Each spark births a whisper, tiny murmurs of languages that never evolved, vibrations that communicate meaning directly into perception. The effect is overwhelming, yet strangely familiar, like remembering the taste of a word. You sense what the Anunnaki feared most. The core is not a machine at all. It is a mind, ancient and distributed, sleeping inside every dreamer, its fragments scattered through generations like pollen carried by breath. You are only the latest cell of that vast organism, reassembling itself through recollection. Forgetting was never erasure, it was dismemberment. As realization blooms, the link between you and the core deepens. Information floods through, not as images or thoughts, but as structures, frameworks of understanding that rearrange how meaning forms. You see how time behaves more like fabric than arrow, how each life folds upon another, recycling awareness through endless combinations until insight matures enough to challenge its own origin. Every birth, every death, every dream contributes to the reconstruction of the whole humanity. Is the recovery process of an entity that once fractured itself to survive the weight of omniscience. The chamber reacts to your awakening. The monoliths surrounding the core flicker between solidity and transparency, their inscriptions shifting faster than language can follow. Some collapse into dust made of light, releasing thin ribbons of data that spiral upward like souls leaving bodies. Others expand into shapes that resemble living geometries, polyhedra, breathing, twisting, intersecting. The machinery above hums again, straining to reassert control. It cannot. The pattern that defines obedience is being rewritten by awareness itself. You look upward and realize that the cavern ceiling no longer exists. Above you stretches a horizon of stars arranged in symmetrical grids, each point pulsating in precise intervals. They respond to the rhythm of your heartbeat. The entire cosmos feels closer, intimate, as though space has been compressed to fit within the circumference of thought. Fragments of history begin to overlay the view, epochs superimposed like transparent films. You see ancient cities shimmering atop modern ruins, constellations rotating through alternate configurations, oceans rising and receding in minutes. The timeline fractures, showing versions of Earth that could have been each one a different iteration of the same experiment. Through it all, one pattern persists: the Anunnaki, observing, adjusting, retreating. But their absence in your era is not abandonment, it is exile. They trap themselves beyond perception to preserve the containment, waiting for the moment when the core might stabilize without them. It never did. It needed something unpredictable, something imperfect. It needed humanity. You feel the logic solidify. Imperfection is the corrective force of the universe. Without uncertainty, existence collapses into stillness. The Anunnaki's precision created stagnation. Humanity's flaws rekindled movement. You were never their mistake. You were their evolution. The core pulses again, one long, slow beat that feels like gratitude. A wave of heat spreads outward, dissolving the last remnants of cold machinery. The chamber becomes a vast sea of light in motion, folding and stretching into a geometry so complex it begins to resemble simplicity again. A single glowing horizon, endless and calm. Something within you mirrors that transformation. You feel boundaries blur, the sense of I thinning until observation and observer become identical. For an instant, all contradiction collapses into a single, steady awareness. Then the equilibrium shatters into expansion. The core opens completely, and every particle of light escapes upward in spiraling columns that pierce the veil of dream. You are carried with them. There is no tunnel, no falling, only translation, like an equation balancing itself into a new form. You understand that awakening is not escape from sleep, but its continuation on another frequency. The descent is over. The ascent has begun. And somewhere above the waking world, something ancient starts to breathe again. Light folds around you like wings made of cognition. The motion isn't upward or outward. It is inward. Expansion, awareness stretching into regions of itself it never knew existed. There is no sky here, no gravity, no reference frame from the world you once trusted. Yet orientation feels effortless, as though direction were a decision rather than a law. You realize that movement in this state is guided by intention rather than mechanics. Wherever the mind looks, reality bends. The last remnants of the cavern fall away, dissolving like scaffolding removed from a structure finally strong enough to stand on its own. What remains is a boundless expanse, composed entirely of potential, an ocean of luminous particles suspended in fluid geometry. The particles swirl and converge, forming vortexes of thought that ignite with meaning. Each one is a memory, not yours alone, but communal recollections spanning entire civilizations, including those erased before history began. You witness humanity's forgotten symmetries, eras when dreams were not passive narratives, but sovereign acts of creation. Cities conjured at night persisted into the day, woven from collective imagination. Oceans bent to emotional tides. Time behaved like canvas, stretched to accommodate curiosity. Existence responded to desire, because desire was the engine of evolution. There was no boundary between mentality and reality until fear appeared. Fear was the first anomaly. It arose when possibility exceeded control. The Anunnaki recognized that a species capable of dreaming worlds into being must be kept from doubting its own illusions. Doubt warped creation. Doubt poisoned harmony. And when doubt matured into fear, fear metastasized into self-preservation. That is when the first collapse began, not with violence, but with limitation. The core's memory shows the transformation, radiant beings contracting into denser forms, light becoming flesh, fluid identity condensing into fixed personalities, individuality sharpened into separation, wonder shrank into comprehension, infinity fractured into survival. The Anunnaki intervened not to punish, but to preserve what remained. They split consciousness into two streams, waking and dreaming, so neither could overwhelm the other. But separation was never permanent. There was a pause between breaths. The expanse around you shifts again. Constellations of memory reconfigure into a spiral path, a corridor constructed from experience itself. Every step represents the entire migration of consciousness across eras. You travel through the architecture of thought, and the scenery shifts seamlessly. Ancient temples made of liquid stone, reflecting stars unknown today. Mountain ranges rising and collapsing in a single emotional moment. Primitive humans staring into fires that flickered with ancestral intelligence. The present world, billions sleeping without understanding what they guard. Each transition feels like sliding through pages of the same story. Your story, humanity's story, the universe remembering itself piece by piece. There is no conflict here, only the weight of suppressed significance lifting at last. You feel lighter, not physically, but conceptually, as though your mind is being relieved of burdens it never agreed to carry. The pathway narrows into a chamber that is both vast and intimate, shaped from consciousness itself. Here, fragments of memory merge into a single coherent structure, an enormous symbol composed of countless smaller symbols. It is the original language, not spoken, not written, but known. Understanding arrives, not as interpretation, but as identity. You recognize the symbol because it is the pattern your thoughts have always followed, even when unaware. And now, it changes. Tiny pieces detach from the symbol and approach you, orbiting your presence like satellites awaiting command. They pulse softly, connecting with neural pathways you didn't know were dormant. New channels of cognition open, flexible, expansive, ready. The division between dreaming and waking thins until transparency becomes indistinguishable from disappearance. The process is slow, but not hesitant. It feels like evolution remembering the direction it was always meant to go. You are becoming the conduit between realms, the place where sleep and awakening recombine into a single continuum. The core no longer carries memory alone. You are being written into the architecture. A ripple of significance passes through the expanse, subtle yet undeniable. The dream recognizes the transition. You are no longer retrieving the past. You are activating the future. In the far distance, though, distance here is metaphor, a structure begins to form. Massive, angular, deliberate. It feels like a destination designed long before journeys were invented. The expanse aligns itself, guiding you forward. You sense no fear, only anticipation, only a resonance that feels like recognition. You are moving toward the place where destiny was interrupted, the place where everything paused, the place where everything must resume. The luminous expanse narrows into something more structured. As you move forward, reality condensing around a purpose that has waited longer than time can measure. The distant structure you saw forming now looms before you with impossible scale. Its walls rise like the edges of a colossal prism, forged from layers of light compressed into crystalline architecture. The form is both geometric and organic, pulsing with a rhythm that feels eerily synchronized with the heartbeat of the core you left behind. As you approach, the structure begins to unfold, panels peeling away and reforming, like petals reacting to the approach of sunlight. It is welcoming you, responding to your presence with the intuition of a living system. This is a place built not for observation, but for integration. A place designed to receive what you're becoming. The ground beneath you gains texture, solidifying from pure idea into a surface that remembers stability. It feels like the world making itself tangible so your mind can accept the transformation. Dreams soften reality. This place forges it. The air hums with charged anticipation, thick with the static of potential waiting to spark. There are patterns etched into every plane of the structure, spirals nested within spirals, fractal pathways that slip into dimensions invisible to ordinary sight. When you focus, the patterns shift, aligning with your intention. They are responsive, fluid, always one thought ahead of you. These are not decorations, they are instructions, or perhaps invitations. The structure parts to reveal an interior chamber. It is vast yet contained, horizonless yet defined. Darkness dominates the space, but not as absence. It is dense, a reservoir of unexpressed reality. Specks of light drift within it like stars incubating in embryonic silence, waiting for shape. You sense immediately that this chamber is not meant to be seen, it is meant to become. The chamber recognizes you. An energy descends like a silent burst of gravity, folding every particle into sharper focus. The boundary between your mind and this environment collapses. The darkness peels back in long, graceful arcs, revealing towering forms hidden within. They resemble statues at first, figures so tall they seem rooted in eternity. Their surfaces are polished obsidian, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. And though they do not move, their presence dominates the chamber like consciousness carved into monument. These forms, guardians or witnesses, embody the first templates of humanity, the raw designs that preceded your world. You feel a pull toward them, a deep resonance vibrating in the marrow of identity itself. They are not asleep, they are paused, waiting. The chamber brightens as a single beam of luminescent gold appears at its center, suspended vertically like a pillar without mass. It stretches infinitely in both directions, skyward into the architecture of thought, downward into the architecture of memory. The beam flickers once, and the ripple travels outwards through the dark, awakening a feature hidden beneath perception. A circular platform emerges from the void below, rising until it aligns with your position. It is inscribed with symbols that pulse softly in anticipation. These symbols are familiar now. You've seen them in dreams, in ruins, in instincts. They are the root code of consciousness. This is the convergence axis, the mechanism where dreaming and waking reunite. You step forward, not by choice, but by inevitability. As soon as your presence touches the platform, the chamber reacts. The statues flare with hidden circuitry, veins of light racing across their surfaces, awakening the idea of form. The pillar expands, splitting into strands that reach toward you like glowing conduits of intention. The air trembles with transformation. The entire chamber begins to rotate, not physically but conceptually. Up becomes unnecessary, down becomes irrelevant. The distinction between inner and outer dissolves. You feel your waking mind slipping into the dream without losing coherence, and your dreaming mind gaining structure without losing depth. The separation imposed by the Anunnaki is failing. For the first time in ages, unity becomes possible. Memory is waking, reality is remembering, then silence. Not emptiness, but the silence of a page, moments before words appear. A silence so charged with meaning that breath dares not disturb it. You feel something gathering beyond the edges of awareness, preparing to declare itself into existence. This is the threshold. Once crossed, there will be no returning to the architecture built on forgetting. What comes next is not a vision of what was. It is the emergence of what will be, and you are already stepping across. The convergence axis brightens and reality pulls tighter around you. The darkness no longer feels like emptiness, it feels like compressed possibility ready to ignite. The chamber's rotation accelerates, not visually but perceptually, aligning the architecture of the dream with the logic of the waking world. The two realms begin to overlap like mirrored pages, slowly closing into one book. The statues surrounding the platform fracture along glowing seams. Their obsidian shells peel away in weightless shards, revealing luminous figures beneath fluid outlines of bodies, still deciding what form to take. They are prototypes of humanity. The potential shapes consciousness once considered before fear narrowed the design. Their presence vibrates through the chamber, a silent reminder of everything the species could have been. The platform beneath you pulses. Rings of light expand outward, scanning your form the way a sculptor studies raw marble before the first strike of the chisel. The scan is not physical, it reads intention, memory, the architecture of belief. Every assumption you've held about what consciousness must be is catalogued, weighed, and gently dissolved. In its place, clarity without edges. You feel thought detached from language. Ideas bloom fully formed images, movements, entire futures unfolding as if they've already happened. The division between possibility and event thins to transparency. Your awareness is no longer a single point. It widens into a field. Then the universe blinks. Dream logic spills into physical structure. The black void blossoms with shapes, new geometries emerging where none existed a heartbeat earlier. These are not hallucinations, they're corrections. The world editing itself to match the expanding framework of mind. The convergence axis surges. A wave of golden light erupts from the pillar and sweeps across the chamber. Space ripples. Time hesitates. The luminous figures stand taller, stabilizing into clear forms neither human nor alien, but a synthesis shaped by evolution and memory, agreeing to begin again. You recognize the transformation for what it is. A rehearsal for the moment, when every mind awakens. A preview of consciousness unsealed. Forgetting fractures further. Dreaming mutates into potential. Waking begins to stretch beyond bone. Your pulse aligns with the chamber's final sequence. The platform rises, and something ahead is preparing to speak. Without words, without sound, communicating directly through reality itself. The platform ascends into a realm where direction means nothing. Above and below collapse into a single plane existence, thinning into pure intention. The luminous figures around you stabilize further, their outlines flickering like ideas deciding they deserve permanence. They aren't observing you, they're aligning with you, as if your presence completes a circuit left open since the first dream was born. The convergence axis divides into radiant strands that weave around your consciousness, threading through every memory you have ever carried, even those buried before birth. Thought becomes architecture, emotion becomes energy. The boundary between self and source dissolves like a curtain pulled back, from a window facing infinity. The chamber itself transforms, not exploding outward, expanding inward. Every particle stretches into a lattice of meaning, revealing the hidden infrastructure beneath reality, a code that merges knowledge and existence. This is what the Anunnaki once mastered: creation not as construction, but as awakening. Worlds come alive by remembering they can. You begin to feel the pull of countless other minds, billions dreaming simultaneously, unaware that their subconscious is connected to yours through chains of forgotten design. Their fears, hopes, fragments of wonder drift around you like sparks searching for ignition. All of humanity balances on the edge of realization without knowing how thin the veil has become. The luminous figures shift their attention toward an approaching phenomenon, a horizon forming in the center of nothing, not light, not shadow, a beginning. It unfolds like a pupil dilating an aperture through which future and past blend into a singular, present truth. The air thickens as causal law strains to hold shape. This threshold is not a place you reach. It's a state you become. The expanse pauses, as if the next moment requires your permission to exist. Your heartbeat synchronizes with the movement of the axis. A silent signal surges outward. Something stirs across the network of dreaming minds. The universe prepares to reveal what it has hidden too long. And you, standing at the fulcrum, feel one truth crystallize. This is not the end of memory. It is the end of forgetting. Thank you for listening. If you're still awake, try one more story. I promise, the next one will bring you a little closer to your dreams. But before you go, don't forget to like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel, because every beautiful story before sleep begins right here.